I've been getting so many amazing downloads lately. I got invited to check out a book called The Prism of Lyra through channeled message of the history of humanoid man in this solar system. And through all of that, and so many other different things, I also was invited to read A Gift from the Stars, which is another book written by a psychic medium. And it is both detail so many different types of star beings and information and knowledge that gets passed with them. And when I got brought these books, a spirit had told me that I was going to be learning about star beings and DNA and how the DNA carries all the gifts and that we choose these bodies and these family lines for their gifts, for their abilities. And I thought it was so interesting because I come from, on one side of my family, a family line very focused on family line. On my mother's side, they're Mormon. And um, there's like a lot of focus on the family tree and on who's in, who's out, all the things, right? And so I found that interesting. And I never really cared much about it. It was never very interesting to me. But I was fascinated by it had to be my dad. And it's interesting because now I understand on deeper levels why it had to be my dad. But it was when I was little, my mom tried to, or before I was here, my mom tried to bring me in earlier than I wanted to come. And she ended up having two miscarriages because I wasn't ready to come, but she was ready. And I ended up telling her that it had to be my dad. And when I was little, she would cry about going through these miscarriages. And I told her that it was because I wasn't ready, that it had to be my dad and she had to be in alignment with my dad because I needed to go through my dad's line. That's a line I travel through regularly. And as a small child, I just knew it had to be my dad, and I told her that. And and this has come up over the years and in so many different ways. And I've always been stuck on it had to be my dad. And when I was younger, I learned about walking through the dimensions and looking at my lifetimes. And I'd gotten an invitation to spirit to wonder at and to see different lifetimes where my dad has been my dad. Because I'd always wondered, why were we so close? What was the connection? Why was it different with him than with my mom or, some of my siblings or something like that? Why? Why? Well, the why is my dad and I have traveled together a lot of times, and I visited about 14, 15 different lifetimes where he was my father. And I was amazed by that. And when I went to go see my mother, and because I wanted to know as well, how many times had I traveled with my mother? Well, I traveled with my mother semi often. She's been in a lot of lifetimes, but she's never been my mother in this way. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. She's been my sister, she's been my cousin, she's been my aunt. She's been a lot of different layers. She's just been someone in a lifetime, that and you're associated to in soul group. And as I was learning about lifetime connections, I had seen that my dad was my dad 15 times, and in almost every single one of those 15 lifetimes where we deeply bonded, deeply bonded. And some in great ways and some in not so great ways, but that connection is so deep and strong because we have traveled together time and time and time and time and time again. Well, upon reading The Prism of Lyra, this author talks about Lemuria and the Zetas and the call out to the universe. Well, the Zetas destroyed their planet and ended up having to go inside their planet to be able to survive. And in that process, they lost the ability to procreate and to respond to external stimuli, as well as other things. And they were ready to expand again on a new level, and they called out to the founders. And the founders are the oh, that's such an interesting question. The founders are such a big, they're like the oldest versions, oldest in a sense, the first original ones to break off from the all that is, and to embody consciousness in such a way, in that sense. And so, also, that's my best understanding of it. I'm not saying it is what it is. I'm saying that's my best understanding of founders. And they made the call, and the founders were looking for a way to upgrade Earth. Was going through a lot of warring, a lot of polarity because of the different beings that were here at the time, different star beings that were here. There was a bunch of different star beings here on and off, but the Palladians were one of them, but they left. And then when the founders answered the call from the Zetas, they came together with the Syrians, the Zetas, the Arcturians, and the Palladians to basically create Lumeria. And Lumeria is in what is now considered Indonesia and parts of Asia. And in that quest, they needed the Palladians because the Palladians had already been doing experiments and mixing the primate DNA of this planet with their own DNA. Because that was some of the big issue, was that the other star beings couldn't adapt to this planet with their own bodies. They needed to mix with the species already here, but the primates, there weren't humans yet. That's where the whole like you'll never find the missing link thing comes from, because the primates were genetically engineered to become what we now know as humanoids in that sense. And that's been done a bunch of different times. Well, that happened again with Lumeria, with the mixing of the Zetas, because with the mixing of the Zetas and the humanoids here, then the Zetas could have the ability to procreate and to respond to external stimuli. But what the Zetas had accomplished, that no one else had yet accomplished in this way, was group consciousness, was oneness, in the sense that it was unity consciousness. The Zetas had been able to accomplish that. So in the exchange with humans on this planet at the time, there was not unity consciousness. The polarity was so strong, it was replaying out the patterns of the Lyran system and then also of Orion. And so with the control and all of that. And so with the creation of Lumeria, which is the Asian races, you can then see where the Zeta, Arcturian, Syrian, and Palladian DNA gets all mixed together. And in that, you get the ability to do unity consciousness, to think as a group, as a unit, and to work as a unit, which I experience here on levels that I had never experienced before in Guatemala. The Mayans are the original embodiments of the Syrians, and they have unity consciousness here. That is here, and it thrives. It thrives. And so, and this is true throughout different parts of Asia, strongly, like, and also within indigenous people. And so I was amazed by these downloads, and Spirit had told me I was going to come here to Guatemala to learn more about the Syrian and the Zeta energy and to understand what it looks like. Also, I moved from Portland, Oregon, which is a portal zone, to Lake Atitlan, which is a huge portal. Once you decide something, boom, it comes. It is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. And I'm sitting here in so much awe also at how things have come full circle around unity consciousness, group think, group consciousness, and how to anchor in, quote unquote, the new world in this sense. Like we're already here doing it. It's already happening. There's no need to put effort. But I always wondered about why was I consciously aware of star beings and this spiritual realm in a way that maybe not everyone was. And I was wondering why I was so drawn to these different energies um, in other countries, because I've always felt huge desires to go and live in other countries, always, ever since I was a child. And I always knew that one day I would, and I'm literally doing that. It's amazing. It's the most amazing experiences. And so it's interesting how all of this has come full circle in the sense of aspects of DNA, the gifts, why it has to be a certain way. My dad's family is from Indonesia, and in my dad's DNA is unity consciousness and the ability to be a unit and be one's own individual, and also be working for the greater good, the collective, the whole, the all. And so I'm fascinated and amazed by the way this shows up in the world. I've been experiencing Guatemala now for about 2.5 months, 2 months, 2.5 months. And I'm amazed at how industrious these people are, how creative and ingenious they are, how they can take whatever resource they have and turn it into more. It's such abundance. Also, the healing and the well-being that is here. I have been in such well-being, getting plenty of sun, smelling delicious flowers, eating delicious fruits, listening and learning and watching and observing what unity consciousness can create. It's amazing to me. I'm in complete and utter awe. And to understand that the vessel, right, that this avatar that we're in, we choose it for a reason. It gets built the way that it is for a reason. It's all on purpose in that sense, right? There's so many things that are on purpose and so many things that are not. But the way that this lines up with talents and gifts and DNA all coming, all of these things coming through your ancestral lines, and the abilities that go through, or that go with going through certain lines, is fascinating to me. I was never really fascinated with this in the way that I am now, and I am enjoying this process so much. So I'm going to end this discussion here. I'd love to hear any questions. Oh, you're welcome, Amy. I've been having such a good time learning about all of this. A couple of years ago, Spirit brought me this download. I had a grand awakening, a new layer of consciousness. And they told me I was going to learn how to work with star beings and how to do this dance. And as I'm sitting here experiencing this on new and different levels, I'm like, yeah, wow, this is amazing. Oh, thank you. It is brave. It's a little scary, but I think it's really good. Like I'm enjoying the experience of knowing new things and pushing boundaries within myself, and also like just learning new cultures, new languages, new experiences. I'm already fluent in Spanish, but I'm loving learning different dialects and experiencing new music and instruments and healing methods. Like, oh, it's so gorgeous. So gorgeous. I hope you have a beautiful day. I'll talk to you soon.